So they sent a request to the U.S. Election Assistance Commission.
Well, let's stop right there. Proof of citizenship.
Right.
How hard is that to show?
It's not hard at all. You can use a birth certificate, a passport, your naturalization papers, and in Kansas, they've got like 13 other documents that you can show. And everybody should realize, the federal government says to employers, you can't employ anybody unless they provide proof they're citizens.
Mm-hmm. Hey, don't say that. They may change that before he leaves. He's got a pen and a phone. All right, go ahead.
So the states, they passed this great law, and they sent a request to the EAC, the Election Assistance Commission, because that's the agency that's in charge of the federal one-page voter registration form. And they said, look, please change the instructions so that any of the residents of our state that use that federal form to register to vote, that they're told they're also going to have to provide proof of citizenship. Well, that happened 3 weeks ago. And immediately, the League of Women Voters, the NAACP, and these other organizations all sued the EAC, saying you can't do that. That's a violation of.
All right, let's slow down a second. The League of Women Voters sounds so harmless. The League of Women Voters, the NAACP, other leftist organizations said no, and they challenged this. Okay, that's where we are. Go ahead.
That's right. Now, look, because you used to be the chief of staff for the Attorney General, the Justice Department's job is to defend federal agencies when they are sued like this. Instead, on Monday of this week, a hearing had been scheduled in federal court in Washington before Judge Richard Leon, because the plaintiffs, the League and all that, they were seeking a temporary restraining order and a preliminary injunction. And the Justice Department, instead of defending...
Let me just stop. Now, so what they were trying to do is prevent this federal agency from, in essence, ensuring that people who vote have to show with the most easily accessible documentation that they are citizens before they vote. And so we have these left-wing groups suing them to prevent them from doing it. And what does Loretta Lynch, what does the United States Justice Department, do they defend this little federal agency? What do they do?
No, they don't. On Monday morning, they file a pleading with the court saying, hey, we're willing to agree to anything the plaintiffs want. We'll consent to a temporary restraining order. We'll consent to a preliminary injunction. And they had told the agency that not only would they not defend them, but they refused to allow the agency to hire its own lawyer.
Well, let's stop there, Hans, because that is unbelievable. So basically what you're telling us, the Department of Injustice under Loretta Lynch said, you know what, we're going to side with the plaintiffs in this case, with these left-wing groups who are attacking this little federal agency. This little federal agency is saying, hey, look, you got to show proof of citizenship before you vote. That's kind of rational. The Federal Department of Justice said, no, they don't. We're backing the left-wing groups, and not only that, agency, we're not going to be your lawyer, and you can't hire a lawyer and defend yourself in court.
That's exactly right. It is, I mean, that is so shocking that when the judge walked into the courtroom, he was clearly shocked at the behavior of the Justice Department, and in a real sign of what he thought about all this. You know, normally when you have a hearing like this, each side gets equal time to make an argument. Well, he gave the plaintiffs who were trying to get a court order, he gave them 20 minutes to argue the case. Then he turned to the Justice Department and said, well, I'm only going to give you 5 minutes because I know you agree with everything the plaintiffs are saying. And then he granted the motion of Chris Kobach, the Secretary of State of Kansas, and Christian Adams, who you know well, of the Public Interest Legal Foundation. They had both moved to intervene in the case so they could defend this federal agency. And the judge said, you guys can both intervene, and in fact, I'm going to give you time to actually argue the case and defend this federal agency. So we have state officials and a private group having to come in and do what the Justice Department should have been doing.
And this is pure politics aimed at trying to stuff ballots, because obviously that's the agenda here. I mean, what could possibly be the other agenda? Are they saying it's too difficult to demonstrate you're an American citizen?
Well, that's what they claim, but you are absolutely right. What's going on here is that they want to make it easy for people who aren't citizens to register and vote, not get caught at it, because they think and they know this will help Democrats in the elections.
So where are we now? Is there a date for another hearing? What happens now?
Well, about an hour and a half ago, literally right as your show was starting, Judge Leon issued a 4-page order denying the temporary restraining order, which is just a fabulous, it's a great decision. But can you imagine? Here he had the lawyers, supposedly on both sides, saying they were going to agree to a TRO, and he denied that.
What about the temporary injunction? What's that stuff?
The preliminary injunction, scheduled. Well, what's interesting about that is when he came into court yesterday, he said, I'm not going to grant a preliminary injunction just because the two of you have agreed on it without full briefing, evidence that one is deserved, and he scheduled a second hearing on March 9th to look at the idea of a preliminary injunction. But look, in this recent order, he just said that he didn't think the plaintiffs had demonstrated a substantial likelihood of success. That's the key language for denying temporary restraining orders, and unless they can overcome that, they're not going to get a preliminary injunction either.
Tell the folks, just generally, a temporary restraining order and the injunction, what's the essential difference?
Well, the difference is you can go to court almost immediately when you file a lawsuit, get a temporary restraining order to stop what the other side is doing, and that just lasts until you can have a full-blown hearing.
So the goal is to have the status quo until you get in front of a judge.
Right. And at that that other hearing, and this is where you argue for preliminary injunction, you present evidence and ask the court to basically stay the case, preserve the status quo until you can hold a trial on the matter. So they've lost the first round, and now potentially they're going to lose the second round. By the way, the lawyer for the Justice Department, I've never seen a greater dressing down of a lawyer than that lawyer got from the Justice Department, because it was very clear the judge just couldn't believe that they weren't fulfilling.
Now, wait a minute. The lawyer got a dressing down from his bosses at the Justice Department?
No, from the judge.
From the judge, right.
Okay. Right, when he was standing up there trying to argue the case.
But their basic claim is what? It's too onerous to demonstrate. What is that their argument?
No, the Justice Department said that they didn't think the agency had any legal basis for the decision it made, and that's just totally ridiculous.
That's part of their job.
It is part of their job.
Isn't it their form?
In fact, look, one of the things the judge said was, he said, "Listen, I've had lawyers from this particular division of the Justice Department who were there trying to argue the case. He says, I've had you guys in my courtroom numerous times, and every time you come in, you guys cover the waterfront in raising all of the legal offenses you can to defend whatever a federal agency is doing, and yet in this case, you didn't do that at all."
So these are really political decisions that they're trying to wrap in the law, and it must come from the top. It must come from Valerie Jarrett, people of that sort, for the entire Justice Department, a genuflect like this. Wouldn't you guess?
It has to be, because, like I said, I think that they acted unethically in not fulfilling the obligation, the duty they've got to defend their client vigorously. In fact, they did the exact opposite.
We better really be resolute. We better really be watchful of this administration. I believe it's capable of virtually anything in the waning hours, the waning months of this administration. This is just another example. And Hans von Kaspovsky, you have done an outstanding job, you and Christian Adams and others, in exposing this. And I want to thank you for spending some of your time with us today.
Thanks, Mark.
All right, God bless. That's one smart dude and a really good guy. And we have a lot of folks like that on our side, by the way. Imagine if we could win the presidency and put some of them in positions of power. That's the goal, ladies and gentlemen. So we're not playing defense all the time. So we can get our people in place. So we can undo what these fools have done. And then advance our liberty agenda, our constitutional agenda. And we can put conservative constitutionalists in the federal judiciary. That's why all this is important, and I'm sick and tired of the Morton Downey Jr. crap from our friend Donald, and I'm sick and tired of Rubio going on tricks and the lies and that. We cannot win this general election if we don't make our case to the American people. It's pathetic.